All right, let's just jump right in. Have you ever had that feeling where you're just working harder and harder, but you're not actually getting anywhere? Well, in this explainer, we're going to tear apart this huge lie that's been draining our energy and honestly our potential. This idea that just grinding it out is the secret to success. See, the root of this whole problem is a fundamental lie we've all been taught to believe. And it's this, that the relationship between how much effort you put in and what you get out is a straight line. You're told if you give 100% effort, you'll get 100% of the results. But what if that simple math is just completely wrong? And when you believe that lie, it creates a feeling that I bet is super familiar to a lot of you. It feels like you're running on a treadmill. You're sweating, you're out of breath, you're moving your legs as fast as you possibly can, but you never, ever leave the starting line. There's actually a name for this feeling. It's called the effort-reward disconnect. It's that awful state where all your hard work, all that immense effort, just doesn't turn into the results you want, and it leaves really talented people feeling totally exhausted and just average, stuck.
So, if a lack of hard work isn't the problem, then what is? Well, the real trap is something we could call simulated productivity. It's the illusion of work, that busyness that sucks up all our energy without actually creating anything of real value. I mean, does any of this look familiar? Your days are just swallowed up by pointless emails, sitting in meetings that go absolutely nowhere, and you're stressing over these tiny little details that, let's be honest, nobody is ever going to notice. And sure, people might praise you for being so busy, but deep down, you're just spinning your wheels. This idea completely reframes the problem, right? The issue isn't that you're lazy or you don't have enough grit. It's a strategic problem. In fact, working hard without a system to point that effort in the right direction, well, that's just a form of cognitive failure. Okay, so to break free from this trap, we have to get our heads around a fundamental truth about how the world actually works. And that truth is, the universe is non-linear. Now, this might be a little tough to swallow, but it is so, so crucial to understand. Most of the things you do all day, that busy work, those minor tweaks, all that stuff, it literally doesn't matter when it comes to getting big results. This obsession we have with linear effort, with just being busy, it creates this massive bottleneck in our lives. It's a trap where, and get this, an estimated 80% of your energy is just wasted on tasks that give you almost nothing back. 80%. And this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? Look at how we're spending our energy. We pour the vast majority of it, that huge 80% chunk, into all these trivial little tasks. And meanwhile, the things that actually matter, the vital inputs that actually move the needle, they only get a tiny sliver of our attention. So how do we get out of this? Well, it takes a fundamental shift in how we think. We have to stop thinking like a worker bee and start thinking like an architect. And here's the difference, right? The worker bee is all about business. They think in terms of linear effort, they simulate productivity, and they stay stuck on that treadmill. But the architect, they focus on generating actual value. They find the few things that really matter, the non-linear levers, and they design systems to pull them. They actually leave the starting line. And the thing is, it's not like you're not capable of this. Our whole culture has basically trained us to be worker bees, but our brains are designed for so much more. Your brain was designed to be an architect, to see the big picture, to build systems, and to create something that matters. So that really leaves us with one big, powerful question to think about. If most of what you're doing is just a performance, a simulation of work, then what are your real levers? What are those few vital inputs in your own life that, if you just focused on them, would create almost all of the value you're looking for?
You know that feeling, right? You've had one of those days, or heck, maybe one of those weeks, where you are just constantly busy. You're racing from one thing to the next, your to-do list is a mile long, but at the end of it all, you feel like you haven't actually made any real progress on the stuff that truly matters. If that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. Let's get into why that happens.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to nail down the core issue, what we call the signal versus noise problem. Then we'll look at the trap this sets for us, which is something called active procrastination. After that, we'll uncover the real hidden cost to our brains, a state of neural entropy. And finally, we'll figure out how to find your leverage points to actually break free from this cycle.
All right, let's dive right in. We all say it all the time. I just don't have enough time. But what if I told you that's not the real problem? The real issue isn't the clock. It's something else entirely.
This right here, this reframes everything. The problem isn't about the number of hours in the day. It's about our inability to tell the difference between the signal, the critically important work, and the endless, overwhelming noise of everything else that screams for our attention.
I mean, just think about your day. We are absolutely bombarded with emails, notifications, meeting requests, and a to-do list that just never seems to end. The real danger here is that we start treating all of it as equally important, and when that happens, we start to drown.
So let's break this down. On one side, you've got the signal. These are the vital few tasks. They have a huge impact, but let's be real, they're almost always the most difficult, challenging things on our plate. And then on the other side, you have the noise. This is all the trivial, low-impact stuff. And here's the catch. These tasks are often super easy, and they give us that quick, satisfying hit of accomplishment.
So, what happens when we consistently, day after day, choose the easy noise over the hard signal? Well, it builds up into a very specific, and I think you'll agree, a very common pattern of behavior.
And that pattern has a name: active procrastination. Now, this isn't about being lazy and doing nothing. Oh no, it's way more deceptive than that. This is when you feel incredibly productive because you're so busy, but you're busy with all the wrong things. You're deliberately doing a ton of easy stuff just to avoid that one big, scary, difficult thing that actually matters.
I love this metaphor because it's just so perfect, isn't it? Imagine your car is on fire. Smoke is just pouring out from under the hood, and you're spending all your energy making sure the hubcaps are sparkling clean. It sounds completely absurd, right? But that's exactly what we're doing when we spend an hour organizing our inbox instead of starting that critical project. Now, this whole behavior is fueled by something called the majority fallacy. This is that little voice in our heads that gets a thrill from checking things off a list. It whispers, "Look at everything I got done today. I must be crushing it." We start to believe that all that activity automatically equals achievement, and that is a really dangerous trap. And this is the result. When your focus is shattered across 20 different little projects, you end up making these tiny, almost meaningless bits of progress everywhere. You're busy for sure. You feel exhausted, but you're not actually moving forward in any direction that counts.
Okay, so this constant state of busyness, it's not just holding back our progress. It's actually having a really profound and kind of damaging effect on our minds. Let's talk about the real cost of living in the noise.
Just take a second and really think about this. How do you actually feel at the end of a day when your attention has been pulled in 100 different directions? Exhausted, right? But it's a specific kind of tired. What's happening inside your head is a massive energy leak. Your brain, which is this incredible high-powered machine, gets totally cluttered with junk. There's just no bandwidth left over for the good stuff, for deep thinking, for strategy, for creativity. It's all used up.
And this leads to a state called neural entropy. Now, that sounds pretty scientific, but all it really means is that your mental system becomes so chaotic, so disorganized from juggling all the noise, that it just loses its power. It can't generate clear, powerful, meaningful ideas anymore.
And this is the painful truth of it all. You end the day completely drained, but it's an exhaustion that comes from wrestling with 1,000 tiny, unimportant tasks. And all the while, the vital few things, the stuff that could actually change your career, your business, your life, they just sit there, neglected.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty bleak, I know. But here is the good news. There is absolutely a way out. It's not about working harder, though. It's about a fundamental shift in how we think about our work.
For decades, we've been obsessed with time management. The whole focus was on efficiency. How can we cram more things into our day? How can we do things faster? But that's the old way. The new way, the paradigm shift, is leverage management. Here, the focus isn't on doing more, it's on effectiveness. It's about doing what matters.
So how do we actually do that? Well, you have to stop trying to manage every single minute of your day. It's a losing battle. Instead, you need to get really good at identifying and managing your leverage points. These are those vital few tasks, the signal we talked about. It's all about finding that 20% of your effort that's going to create 80% of your results. That's the heart of Pareto's principle.
And that brings us right here to the most important question you can ask yourself today. As you go about your work, just be honest. What is that one high-impact, difficult thing, the real signal, that you've been avoiding by polishing all those hubcaps? Because identifying that's your first step to breaking free.
All right, let's jump right in. We've all heard about the 80-20 rule, right? You know, the idea that a tiny bit of your effort is what gets you most of your results. But today, we're going to look at it in a way I bet you haven't before.
So here's the question. Is this whole thing just another one of those trendy productivity hacks that gets passed around online? Or is there something, way deeper going on here that most of us are completely missing?
Okay, so first things first, let's get on the same page. The official name for this is the Pareto Principle. And all it says is that for a whole lot of things in life, roughly 80% of the results you get come from just 20% of the things you do. It's a wildly unequal relationship.
But this is where we need to flip the script. This is not a hack. It's not a helpful little tip. Think of it more like a law of physics for systems. It's a fundamental mathematical property of how reality is actually put together.
So let's just ditch the name 80-20 rule for a second and call it something that really captures its power. Leverage point analysis, because that's what this is all about. Finding those few special points where a tiny push creates a huge effect.
To really get this, I want you to picture something with me. Imagine a gigantic, ancient stone door. It is absolutely colossal, it's heavy, and it looks completely impossible to move.
So what's your first instinct? Probably to just push with all your strength, right? Right in the center of the door. You can strain, you can grind, you can put every single ounce of your energy into it, and nothing. The door doesn't even budge. That's your 80% of effort getting you 0 results.
Okay, so brute force is out. Let's think smarter. What if we stop pushing on the center, and instead we go looking for the hinges? What happens if we apply just a tiny, focused bit of pressure right there?
And boom, the massive door just swings open. It's almost effortless. See, the outcome wasn't about how much force you used, it was all about where you placed it. And that right there is the entire concept in a nutshell. Those hinges, that's the 20%. They are the leverage points. They're where a little bit of effort creates a massive, massive effect.
So you see, we're really talking about two completely different approaches to, well, everything. On one hand, you have the volume of work method, just pushing harder and harder. That's the 80% trap. On the other hand, you have the placement of effort method, finding that 20% leverage point. It's the ultimate definition of working smart, not hard.
And this totally changes how we should think about high performers. They aren't superhuman. They don't have some crazy endless work ethic. They're just better hunters. They're simply more accurate at finding the hinges in any given situation. It's a skill you can learn.
The reason this works is because reality, well, it's not a one-to-one game. Input and output are not directly linked. Putting in 10 hours of distracted, unfocused work doesn't get you 10 units of progress. But 1 hour of highly focused, leveraged work, that could be worth 100.
I mean, just look at this chart. It really hammers the point home, doesn't it? That tiny little 20% sliver of what you do is responsible for that huge 80% chunk of your results. And meanwhile, the vast majority of your actions, that giant 80% slice, is barely moving the needle at all. It's kind of shocking when you see it laid out like that.
And this isn't just some abstract business theory. This pattern is everywhere. For your company, 20% of your clients are probably bringing in 80% of the money. In your personal life, 20% of your habits are likely creating 80% of your happiness. And whenever you learn a new skill, there's always a critical path. That core 20% that gets you 80% of the way there.
So what's the big takeaway here? What do you do with this information? Well, it means you have to totally shift your mindset. Most of us operate with an addition mindset, always asking, what more can I do? What else can I add to my to-do list? We need to switch to a ruthless subtraction mindset and start asking, what can I eliminate? What is the 80% of junk that's just creating noise? And when you really get this, everything changes. That constant feeling that you need to grind 24/7 just melts away. It becomes a game of precision, not just persistence. You just have to apply the right pressure to the right point at the right time.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. Take a good, honest look at your work, at your goals, your relationships. Find those massive stone doors, and then ask yourself the real question. What are the most important hinges in your life?
Let's talk about that feeling of being on a hamster wheel. You know the one. You're constantly busy. You're always doing something, but you're not actually getting anywhere meaningful. Well, today, we're digging into a mindset shift that's all about getting off that wheel for good. It's about moving from being just a worker to becoming an architect of your own success. So, I want you to kick things off by asking yourself this one really honest question. Just think about your last week, or even your last month. Were you busy, or were you actually effective?
Believe me, they are not the same thing. And figuring out that difference, well, that's the key to everything we're about to unpack.
Okay, so this whole idea really boils down to two totally different ways of thinking. On one side, you've got the worker mindset. This is pretty much our default setting, right? It's all about activity, collecting tasks, checking things off a list because it feels like we're being productive. The problem, it leads straight to burnout. But on the other side, you have the system architect mindset. This isn't about activity, it's about leverage. It's not about doing more, it's about designing the results you want from the get-go. So how in the world do you make that jump? Well, the source material gives us a super practical framework for this, and it's called the 80-20 protocol. It's a 3-step process designed to totally overhaul the way you approach your work.
Let's dive right into step 1, the 80-20 value audit. This is where you have to get brutally honest with yourself and figure out what actually moves the needle in all the stuff you do day to day. This visual just says it all, doesn't it? The hard truth is that for most of us, a whopping 80% of what we do is just noise. It's tasks that feel urgent, they feel productive, but they don't actually get us closer to our goals. The real results, the real progress, it's all hiding in that tiny 20%, the few vital things that actually matter. Okay, so here's your homework. A value audit is basically a look back. You're going to list out, and I mean everything you did over the last 7 days. The point here isn't to beat yourself up. It's just to see it all on paper. And then you ask which of these things, which handful of tasks, actually pushed me toward my big, long-term goals. And this is how ruthless you have to be. Out of that entire week's worth of work, all those emails, all those meetings, all those tasks, your mission is to find just 2, the 2 single activities that created the most impact. Everything else, the source just calls it noise. All right, so you found your high-impact tasks for the week, but how do you make that a daily habit? How do you protect that focus every single day? That's where step 2 comes in, your daily rule of 3. This is all about a morning ritual that sets you up to win. It's simple. 1, every single morning, you identify your 3 highest leverage actions for the day. 2, you do this first thing. And 3, and listen, this is absolutely crucial, you do it before you touch your phone, before you open your laptop, before any digital device gets a chance to hijack your attention. And here's the rule that makes the entire system work. You are not allowed to get sucked into what the source calls low-value maintenance. You know what that is, checking email, scrolling through notifications. You can't do any of that until your 3 big tasks are done. Think of those 3 tasks as the hinges that swing the door of your day wide open. This is how you fight back against distraction and make sure your most important work always gets done first. And that brings us to the final step. And this might be the toughest one. It's not about adding more to your plate. It's about taking things off. This is step 3, practice aggressive elimination. So what do you do with that 80% of noise we keep talking about? You have 3 choices, and you have to be decisive. If it needs to be done but not by you, delegate it. If it's something you do over and over again, automate it. And if it really, truly doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, you just delete it. Gone. This quote from the source material just completely flips the script on productivity. The goal isn't to have a to-do list a mile long. The real goal, the true win, is to get a huge result with the absolute minimum amount of effort. That, right there, is the system architect mindset. And that's really the core of it all. This protocol isn't just a collection of productivity tips. It's about a fundamental shift in your identity at work. It's about becoming a designer of outcomes. Let's just look at that one more time because it's so powerful. You stop being a collector of tasks where your worth is tied to how busy you look. Instead, you become a designer of outcomes where your value comes from the results you engineer. And this breaks it down perfectly. Efficiency is doing things right, like clearing your inbox super fast. But effectiveness, that's about doing the right things, like spending your afternoon on the one project that will actually grow the business. This whole system is built to force you to choose effectiveness every single time. I mean, this closing thought from the source says everything, doesn't it? So much of our busy work is just polishing the hubcaps. It looks shiny, it feels like we're doing something, but the car isn't actually going anywhere. This is about putting all your energy into building the engine that's going to drive you forward. And when you finally make that shift, you're no longer just working in a system someone else built. You are the architect. Welcome to the system.
Now, for those of you who want to put this into practice, the source material that this explainer is based on invites you to subscribe to their publication, called Unordinary Mind. They also say to comment leverage on their content, and they'll send you their 80/20 audit template to get you started.